The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Brodinski. This is the episode for April 29, 2018. On my right, the one and only editor of the Record Journal, Ralph Tomaselli. Ralph, the topic we're going to discuss during the most of the show is probably one of the most important, maybe in the last year or two, in my view. We'll get to that in a minute, and we have a special guest coming on the set. But first, the Citizen Mike Show was in Washington, D.C. this past Saturday, and of course, that was the day that all these student marches were held all across the country. We were in Washington, D.C. We took a short video. It's only 20 seconds, but I got to have a trigger warning here for some viewers with delicate sensibilities. This may be difficult to watch. Bruce, hit it. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, just gives a little feel of what went on in Washington, D.C. and across the country. And we're going to take this up, you and I, on a later show, and the issues raised by that march.
Now, what was the delicate sensibilities?
Well, if you were a card-carrying member of the NRA, you would be deeply offended.
I thought I missed something really...
That was my dry humor.
And then I thought you were going to quiz me on...
I might.
Spotting the Wallingford residents.
The Wallingford residents featured in that video was Vinnie Avalone and his wife Bonnie Avalone. Right, they were the stars of the video.
Very good.
The Board of Education, changing the subject a little bit away from that, the Board of Education recently announced that it was going to ask for additional money for resource officers. And that was the subject of a piece in the Record Journal recently. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Right. We're going to talk about this again, but just sort of a viewer's alert. I would caution folks, just because there's some sort of a move to add resource officers, don't go all in until you know exactly what resource officers mean. It means different things to different people. To some, it's a cop with a gun, and to others, it's not necessarily that. I would just draw our attention to an existing draft job description issued by the Board of Education that would not include a good guy with a gun. So if you're interested in adding money to the budget, to the mill rate for resource officers, first find out exactly what that means. Let's get to the point of the show.
Okay.
And a special guest in the studio is Mike Glidden. Mike, thanks for coming on the Citizen Mike Show.
Thank you for having me.
Mike is the former chairman of the Wallingford Zoning Board of Appeals. He is currently employed by the town of Simsbury as the assistant town planner. So Mike knows a lot about planning and zoning, and has been around the block with those issues. But he also holds another office. Ralph, you wrote that down before we
Mike
went on
is the vice president of the Connecticut Association of Zoning Enforcement Officers.
All right, there you go.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what's going on downtown are some changes that are afoot. First, there was a recent a project that was recently announced and described at a meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And also there's a discussion about changing the zone for the sort of the uptown downtown area in the neighborhood immediately adjacent to Center Street, going from starting the Four Corners, going maybe as far as Fair Street, and then going down the hill to the train station. This is a very big deal, and it's not hypothetical. I think some big changes are afoot, and we're here to talk about them. And to aid us, we got 8 video clips and 3 photographs. But first, Mike, I want to go to you. You were at that big meeting. I think it was over 3 hours. Mm-hmm. Give us the broad brush of the atmosphere in the room and your general impression.
There was quite a group that was there. I saw some members that are property owners within. There was a few concerned citizens. From the commission standpoint, it seemed, they continued the hearing pending some comments from the town's attorney. They seemed very favorable of this proposal, although there were certain aspects of the proposed regulations which I think certain members had concern about.
So I'm going to get a little specific. There were 2 things talked about that night. One is a new commercial enterprise. It's been sort of reported and published as a rooftop restaurant.
Right.
Going in right around the post office area, and after that discussion, that was approved.
Right.
That was a special permit, which means that the character of the neighborhood is a relevant criteria, a special permit. And after that discussion was over, this zone change that could impact the height of the buildings, the look of the buildings, the parking, the density, all those kinds of big deal kind of issues. That was the second part of the building, but we're going to get to that and have Mike weigh in. But first, I want to get the geography set. Okay. Bruce, we got 3 photos that I took that are going to help us with the geography and show exactly where this is going on. Let's put the first one up and move quickly to the second and the third. This is right around the post office. The new project, the rooftop restaurant so-called project, is right around the post office, right in downtown, right on the Four Corners. And I haven't read the restaurant location. That is now a narrow sort of parking lot. There's nothing there. But the same parcel wraps around the back of the post office, and it comes out on South Main Street, kind of kitty corner from the town hall, and on that property is a kind of rundown old medical building.
Right.
Let's get to the next one, Bruce, the next photo. That is taken on Center Street, maybe with my back to Michael's Restaurant or something close to that. Looking into that small, skinny parking lot, well, there would be a new structure right in between the 2 parked cars. There'd be a new structure. We're going to get more details about that. And let's see if we got a third photo. Aha! That's a photo of the billboard in front of the location where that commercial structure will be. And it's worth pausing an extra 5 seconds to look at that. You see sort of a bridge effect with a car coming in and a car coming out. And as I look at the screen, to the left of that is another part of the structure, which is all glass, which would envelop a staircase. Let's take that down and get to the first video, and then I'm going to ask Mike what his reaction to that first is. So that first video clip, Bruce, 3, 2, 1, let's hit it.
On the lower level, we have an existing brick veneer, and then on the upper level, there is this mansard facing that projects from the top floor with indentations for the windows, and this is currently clad in vinyl. So what we are proposing to do is keep the brick veneer, but completely remove this mansard projection and re-side that upper story completely with a essentially a composite siding, similar, or maybe the James Hardy product So this would be like clapboard siding. And then use projections over the band's windows to kind of give some shadow line and variation in the design with a material that would essentially be a composite metal panel that would match up with the metal panel we're proposing to use on the commercial building, so that we have some architectural ties between the two structures. And we are building out essentially a portico here that would come out with 2 columns to cover the entry, because right now there's no weather cover right now at those entry doors.
So that's going to be all residential. Bruce, let's tee up clip 2. It's only 29 seconds. Let's hit that. 3, 2, 1, go.
The range is 634, 650, 599, 625, 604, 626. So that's basically the range. There's one that's as small as 524. There's a range.
Thank you. I think it goes up to about 755.
Mike, what do you think of the new look, the proposed look of that building?
Putting lipstick on a pig.
Uh-oh, explain.
You know, you look at that existing building and how it fits in the character of downtown. It really, it doesn't match. The attempt of kind of raising the roof and bringing the existing facade back and using hardy plank and the metal roof, I don't see it blending in with the architecture flavor of the area. And then that first photo of the proposed restaurant, I mean, that one elevation that you have all that glass, pick another building in the downtown that you have that significant area of glass. You see more of a breakup. You see the bricks, and so these are 2 buildings that really stand out if you're looking at architecture and character of our downtown.
Ralph,
Well,
you love it.
yeah. Do I love it? Just a couple comments.
Okay.
One, you know, the piece of property where the apartments are going
Yep.
is extremely well known, I think, because it's near the post office and it's across from Town Hall. So I think that was a really well-known parcel, and there were a lot of rumors that perhaps Town Hall or the post office would be interested in it. The other piece of property, to be quite honest with you, I've been in town for nearly 30 years. I didn't even know it existed. I assumed that it was the post office property, or it's such a narrow, you know, so just, you know, I didn't even know that. So when they were talking about putting this rooftop restaurant near the post office, at first I couldn't imagine where it was.
Yeah. Do you think that the residential building, that's the one sort of kitty corner from Town Hall, looks good, looks bad, is an improvement? How would you... This is subject, you know,
No.
everyone has an opinion.
Right.
I'm interested in yours.
And I hate to be milquetoast, but
Yep.
it's not turning me off or particularly turning me on. What I am really intrigued about is, I think like everybody who's got 20-somethings living at home with them, it's 22 one-bedroom apartments, and I'm hoping they're going to be fairly affordable.
Well, you can always pack in a roommate or two.
Yes.
I'm not
no,
kidding.
No, that's
I'm
true.
not kidding.
No, that's true. That's
You know,
true. That's true.
I mean, that
Good
brings
point.
up, look at what's going on in Hamden right now.
Yeah.
Hamden's grappling with that issue as we speak. A lot of, related to Quinnipiac and Southern, et cetera, they're having rental housing issues for that reason, exactly what Mike said. You can pack in 2-3 roommates in that 800-square-foot apartment.
Yeah.
Good point.
Let's take a look at that clip 3. That's a little longer. That's about just over 2 minutes. And here, the plan for the restaurant is described in more detail. Then we're going to discuss this at length. Bruce, let's hit that clip 3, the rooftop restaurant. 3, 2, 1, go.
Then on the commercial building, basically what we've done is kind of use to create 2 blocks. The one block that we need for the drive-through of the cars and the access to the parking at the rear of the building, and of course we need vertical access for the 3-story building. So we were going to put the stairs to the top right here on the front facade, so we'd be able to have 3 stories of glass, and then have the dining area, one of the dining areas over the drive-through, and then above that have the pergola and the railing for the roof deck. This would be the facade that would face and so these siding panels, these metal panels here that essentially just cover everything that's not glass, would match the ones on those window projections on the residential building. And as you can see here, we're using green frames for the glazed curtain wall and the top of the building to match up again with the same color on the residential building. So they may be 2 structures, but we are trying to tie them somewhat architecturally together so it looks like they're part of the same development. And then this would be the facade that would face the post office property. And seeing as how this is the property line, we're not allowed to have windows or openings that open into a space because you're on a property line, so there's fire issues with doing that. So we can have it open here where it's the drive-through. We don't have any occupied space, and we do have the roof deck here, so we can keep that open, but this would just essentially be a change in color of the material that's being used there for the siding.
Mike, what do you think?
Like I said before, I mean, that's a lot of glass on that one elevation, really struggling to say that's in character of the neighborhood. And also, I mean, the deck, the outer, the rooftop dining, I mean, it is something that could be successful. Look at the Elbow Room in West Hartford. However, it abuts up. There's residents nearby. This was a special permit. There was no discussion on, will that restaurant have a liquor license? Will it be open late? Et cetera, et cetera. I mean, those are all the other things that should be considered as your impact to the neighborhood, not just aesthetics.
Well, do you think the economic development types, the development hawks care one way or the other, or?
You know what, you should look at it, it's not residential, this is commercial, so it could, for all we know, today it's a restaurant, tomorrow there's someone comes in and says, you know what, it's a great medical office, I like the building, I'm going to convert it to medical office, and they can do that. I mean,
sure.
It's been approved. So.
Or as I joke around with you, Ralph, it could be a McDonald's, a downtown McDonald's.
It could be.
Well, now how do you like it?
Well, a couple. I don't know if I'd like that, but I do see Mike's point about the glass. Just a couple quick points. I see his point about the glass. As far as rooftop dining, there's a restaurant in Southington called Cava that has tapped into the rooftop dining trend, and by all accounts has done really well. It's hard to get a seat up there on a nice weekend night. That's why this story did very well on our website. People were immediately attracted to the notion of rooftop dining. Excuse me.
Yep.
And just one other quick point, though, and you guys will keep me honest on this. The reason we're talking about these 2 properties together is because, and correct me, in order to do the apartments, there has to be a mixed-use component to this development.
Sort of. I think you're on to something, but I'm going to go to Mike first, and then I'm going to mop up after Mike. Mike, why don't you, or do you want me to take a first swing?
You can take a swing at it.
So this is all one lot, first of all.
Okay.
We think of it as 2, but it's all one lot.
Okay.
And the existing zoning says residential is not allowed on the ground floor.
Okay.
Well, here we just looked at that medical building, and there's residential on the ground floor.
Right.
And we're going to get into the issue of variances in a few minutes. But I think from the developer's perspective, in order to make this a profitable project, they needed to use the medical building to the max.
Right.
So that meant all residential. But then they say, we have this little spur of land, that's the parking lot, and we could make that residential, commercial, and kind of pretend that the intent of the zoning regs is fulfilled because we have commercial, we have residential. There may be two separate buildings, but pretend they're not.
Okay.
And so now we have presto, mixed use, and that's what they're trying to encourage. And it's sort of a fiction, to say that it's mixed use in one building, because clearly it's not. But that's the rationale. So these people bought the property, I think, in 2015. They knew that what they were getting into. They knew that they had an old parking lot there. They also knew that they would have to do something sort of dramatic in order to use that. But you're a developer. You're there to make money. You're not there necessarily to make the neighborhood look great.
Right.
So you use the property in any way you can, and that's how these two things got tied. So first came the variance on the residential, because it's not supposed to be residential in the ground. Then they say, well, we would really like to use this other part of the lot, so they have a design for a commercial, and they come in for a special permit, and this is the meeting.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your
No,
question.
you absolutely did, and I just
okay.
want to bring up one other quick point, and again, if I'm off target, you guys will let me know. But I think the developer would have been okay just doing a residential apartment building.
Well, he would have. You mean legally?
Right. I think if he could wave a wand,
Sure.
and he would have. So I've always viewed this second building as a way to accomplish the main goal here, which is 22, which is these apartments. But tell me if I'm...
Mike.
He may also be taking the approach, so you have the 22 apartments, the residential development, that's going to finance my speculative restaurant or commercial. So, and that was part of the discussion, the Planning and Zoning Commission. They focused on, well, you're really going to do the commercial portion? We need to tie this somehow so it's not two separate projects. Because straight face, you look at it, I see that as two different projects.
Sure.
I see it's my cousin's next door, the commercial, but we're mixed use.
Yeah.
No, and I just want to add to that, that they were so concerned about the building, this rooftop restaurant, that they required him, he can't lease half the apartments until the shell of that building is up. So there was concern that that his heart is really that he was going to attempt to rent apartments and somehow get around
Abandon the other project.
about the other part of the project.
And the intent of the developer, by the way, at least as expressed at the meeting, was to lease the commercial part to somebody. He wasn't a restaurateur.
Right.
Let's get that clip 4 in, and then we're going to come back to whether, the attractiveness of it. That's clip 4. It's about 30 seconds. Bruce, let's hit that. 3, 2, 1, go.
Last comment I would make upon approval, if you get approval, I'd like to see something more aesthetically pleasing than kind of a starch building. It just seems architecturally it could be more appealing for that downtown area, take into some of the comments from the public. As far as downtown and the Victorian era appeal. Thank you.
Now, who's that? That's a Planning and Zoning Commissioner,
Okay.
Rocco Matarazzo. He didn't like the look of this, and he's on the record. And he voted for the project eventually. Commissioner Jamie Hine voted against it, but we have at least 2 commissioners sort of not so sure. I never extracted from you your likability rating 1 to 10 on that commercial part. 1 being, I don't like it.
5.
But you tolerate it.
I would tolerate it to get the residential part of this project.
Why?
I think that I'm assuming these are going to be fairly affordable housing in the downtown area is good for the town. Not just.
Well, this is not affordable. I think they're trying to get $1,500 a month.
I said more affordable. So right,
Okay.
So I would be okay with the apartments.
Mike?
2. I just, like I said, I don't see this meshing with the surrounding neighborhood area.
Yeah.
And it's a speculative build. the focus was on the residential. I totally agree with Ralph. Affordable units is a goal that the town really needs to work towards. So, the rental market is one that's weak and it needs more.
Well, let's not confuse these 22 units with affordable housing.
Yeah,
I
they are
think I
not.
said more affordable. And maybe you wouldn't even consider them more affordable.
I'd consider them more unaffordable.
Well,
But there you go. Everyone can have a different opinion.
right. But so if for 1,600, if you were young and you
Yeah.
got 2 people in there, it would be affordable.
Seriously?
Well,
I mean, seriously? I mean, if the planning and zone, if the developer came in
Right.
front of the Planning Zoning Commission and let that cat out of the bag
right.
and said, these are going to be, nice upscale apartments, and everyone is thinking executives that are going to commute to Manhattan right away.
Right.
Executives that can go to Manhattan or maybe some high office building in Hartford. These are going to be young executives, that are wealthy, are going to be engaged in high-end dining,
Right.
At Michael's, the library, all that kind of stuff. If they said, oh, and by the way, if we have to rent to young men with 2 roommates, we'll do it, that would be the death knell of this project.
What about
Mike,
older-
you were there. Is that?
I agree with you. I mean,
Yeah.
look at it this way. In the context, you have the train platform, which
Yeah.
everyone thinks that's the magnet that's bringing in this new demographic that's
John
not.
Laterna said the Renaissance.
Yeah, it's one stop away. It's
Right.
it's still down in South Norwalk. I'm sorry. But yeah, you're right. If you said you're gonna have the college guys that are renting to 2-3 people that's at a time, I don't think they would have supported it. They had this vision of exactly what you said.
Yeah. So Rocco Matarazzo said he wasn't really happy with the look of it. The Planning and Zoning Commission could have denied this temporarily, sort of denied it, I'm going to say without prejudice, and told the guy, you better come back with a design for the exterior that's more consistent with the character of the neighborhood. Make it somehow, you're the architect, make it look more Victorian. And the guy, we're going to pull up our stakes and we're not going to develop, but that was an option.
Is there no other point in the process where the design is going to come under?
It's over.
Okay.
Done. So I have a question, Ralph, for you and then for Mike. The purpose of new projects in the uptown, I'm not talking about down by the train station, I'm
Right.
talking in the so-called restaurant districts uptown.
Right.
What is the purpose of that, new projects? Is it any project by any means necessary because we're desperate for new projects in the uptown? So we'll take a gamble, a real gamble on that restaurant. That's right in the highest visibility part of the, we're going to take a real gamble because we kind of want a rehabbed residential building. Is the purpose grand list enhancement? Is the purpose to improve the attractiveness of the downtown, of the uptown area? Is the purpose to serve existing residents better with, like a fruit and veggie store, a place that people can go?
Right.
And what is in your mind? Why are we doing this?
Good question. The thing I would say is that maybe I'll defer to Mike a little bit, but the town planners seem to be very supportive of this project.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I think that her reasoning was that it was the type of mixed-use project. First of all, I think she was happy about any new development proposals downtown.
Well, here's the disconnect, and I won't
Right.
interrupt you.
Right.
Everyone we've ever talked to,
Right.
I believe, have said the uptown is really nice, really successful,
Right.
pretty vibrant. It's a restaurant district, and it doesn't need anyone to bend over backwards to improve it. It's pretty good.
Well, what about?
So why is everyone, why?
And maybe I'm missing something basic here, but
Okay.
what about people living in those units?
Yeah.
That are now going to frequent
It's vacant.
these. Right. No, but
Yeah.
when you put the apartments in,
Right.
aren't you creating customers for those uptown businesses?
I want you to walk me through that, and I know Mike wants the way. I want you to walk me through that. You're going to get 22 customers, or 44,
Right.
or 66,
Right.
and customers for whom?
Well, I'm assuming if they're living there, they might go to restaurants.
So we're doing this for the bar owners.
No, I don't know if you're doing it for the bar owners. Yes, you're doing it for the bar owners.
That's all I wanted to pull
Yeah.
out of you.
Okay.
Mike?
I think it's twofold. One, it's the first investment you see in our downtown, significant investment, whether you like it or not, how it looks or functions. Two, it's the first investment that has a residential development component that since what, 2012, 2008, we've been talking with the incentive housing zone to try to get people to move downtown, whether it's downtown proper or uptown, meaning by the restaurant district. So, I mean, I think it's the first person who came through the door with a pulse and with a plan. So, therefore, yeah, you're going to get a very receptive audience from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I think we're going to see later on in the show in one of the clips, but I'm not really sure. A fairly cogent argument was made that you're not doing this for the restaurant owners because the restaurant owners don't want any more competition. That they're not necessarily full every day.
Right.
Maybe they're just hanging on, but how do we know that the uptown area can handle another restaurant? Are there enough customers to go around? Keeping in mind that a rooftop operation is only 5.5 months out of the year, and after that the weather goes bad.
I think, though, that Mike is making the point that I was trying to make,
Okay.
which is, do you have a lot of proposals for the downtown area, for the uptown or downtown
And
area?
your point is,
that
take what you can get,
that at
right?
least it's
I mean,
life.
is that,
That at least it's life, it's some proposal. I would imagine.
and suppose this is the ugliest building you ever saw, and you say, after it's all up, I wish this never happened.
Well, right, but I mean, the Planning Commission has some control over the look of that building. Now, they didn't run that building by me.
Okay.
They ran it by the Planning Commission.
It's a huge gamble.
They ran it by the ZBA, and they both signed off on it.
Therefore,
I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that it's a proposal that came in. It went through the process. It sounds like the planner, the Planning Commission, and the ZBA all approved it.
the difference is I'm not ready to cede my judgment, which is no worse than theirs.
Right.
When it comes to aesthetics, I'm not ready to surrender that. So to say, well, we have experts to tell us what's pretty and what isn't.
Right.
And I said, sorry, I mean, you can talk all you want, but merely because you're employed by the mayor doesn't necessarily mean that...
No, that wasn't my point. My point was that there's a proposal,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming that everybody was glad to have a proposal.
No.
And even me,
No,
I was glad to have a
Rocco
proposal.
was not happy with it.
Well, then,
Rocco,
Jamie voted against it.
Jamie
Right.
Hine wasn't...
Jamie was the only one who voted against it.
He was the only
So
one who
that's-
voted against it.
No,
that's the
and
key.
if the and even after the, I mean, I don't see surrounding property owners petitioning against this building, do I?
Well, that certainly is the final test. No one objected,
No.
but people did object.
No, I'm not saying it's a final test, but certainly in this day and age, when people start online petitions pretty quickly, I just didn't see anything develop here.
I got to say, and then I want to get to that next clip. I got to say that the fact that no one objects means pretty much you can get away with anything, because there's not a lot of people that want to go on the record in public and stop a project. Not a lot of people that want to do that. So, Bruce, we got a clip that follows. Let's hit that one. 3, 2, 1, go. It's Craig Fishbein, I believe.
I share the concerns about parking. And, I'll just point out to you, if you as a commission are disappointed with what the ZBA does, you perhaps could do what Meriden has done in the past, where they've brought a lawsuit against their ZBA.
Bringing a lawsuit against the ZBA. Hold on. That's radical. Bruce, let's play that next one in sequence, and then we're going to go to Mike Glidden.
And certainly on some of the applications that have gone to the ZBA, we have issued a comment letter to the ZBA with our concerns. Unfortunately, I think with most of them, correct me if I'm wrong, it's been to no avail.
Mike, what's going on here? What's the big issue here?
Well, when the ZBA grants a variance, they're granting an exception to the rules to a property owner. So in the sense of, let's put it in the context of downtown, you could be granting relief that may not jive with the rest of the plan. It's interesting that the chairman's comment on, well, we've sent our comments in the past to the ZBA. I mean, I'll speak as the former chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The 6 years while I was the chairman, I received one comment from the Planning and Zoning Commission. So, I mean, I'm glad to hear if they're actually acknowledging applications now, that they're commenting. They have every right. If they feel that these decisions, such as like this one, is not consistent with their plan of conservation development, is contradicting the goals of their zoning regulations, then they should appeal a decision. Rather than having an auditorium filled with people saying, why are we looking at basement apartments, in the case that was specific to this application, why are we looking at other things that were granted relief? I know the city of Meriden, that's what Craig referenced to, that was the council and the Zoning Board of Appeals that went all the way to the Supreme Court in Connecticut on that decision, which was overturned on a use variance.
So in order to get a variance, there has to be demonstrated something that's called a hardship.
Mm-hmm.
And a hardship is not financial disappointment, that I couldn't make as much money as I'd really like to, and oh, there's a strip of land which is now a parking lot, and I really need to put something on there to make more money. Mm-hmm. So in this case, the variance was granted to the residential piece to allow the developer to have residential on the first floor, and in order to get permission to do that, he had to get a variance, he had to prove a hardship. Just my opinion, so whatever follows is just my opinion. In my humble opinion, there's no way on God's green earth that could be considered a hardship to enforce commercial on that first floor. Maybe it wouldn't be his first choice, second or third, but a hardship is very, very hard to prove. So the case is pretty clear that the Zoning Board of Appeals, in this case, gave out a variance when it had no business doing so. And in fact, on the record, in the ZBA's reason for granting the variance, it didn't say hardship at all. It said something like, well, it would improve the neighborhood, or, it's a better use of the property. Something which you put it in front of the judge, you say, seriously? I mean, you gave a variance for this, for this reason? Mike?
You know what's funny? While I was on ZBA, I had Mark Brantz, he's a land use attorney from Glastonbury, provided training from the board. And, we really made an effort to educate the board on what they're required to do in determining hardships. And while I was there, the Verrillo case came out, which really outlined there's a basic checklist of what is considered a variance now in Connecticut, and it is a very, very tough bar to prove.
So, Ralph, as my expert, representing the man in the street, would you rather have a Zoning Board of Appeals that will issue a variance when the law says you really shouldn't, on the basis that this project is good for the uptown, and I'd rather have a Zoning Board of Appeals that will kind of look the other way on the law and by any means necessary and be able to allow this project to move forward, even though variances, they're not entitled to it. I want to play ball. Would you rather have that?
No, I don't think...
And I'm not accusing you of that.
Right, no, I know. I think you bring a good point, but it gets back to... maybe we shouldn't even be here looking at designs for this project, because if the ZBA, what you're suggesting is if they had enforced the correct rules or the guidelines, the residential portion of this wouldn't have gotten approved.
Well, we don't know that. That's speculative.
Right.
They might have put offices on the first floor.
Well, they could have.
Yeah, they might have put offices on the first floor like they should have.
Right. But the ZBA should be consistent about what they're doing.
Well, they are. They're consistent in giving out variances.
Okay. They should be consistent in applying. Because what you don't want to end up with, and I'm surprised Craig suggested this.
Yeah.
The Planning Commission suing the ZBA, and I watched that unfold in Meriden. Well, you know what? If you're a taxpayer, and there were a lot of taxpayers who watched that, what you're doing is you're footing the legal bill for two town entities to sue each other. And the legal bills in this case became expensive. So I don't know if that's the...
I'm not sure that is either.
Right.
I want to change the subject, though, because we're going to run out of time, and get away from this particular project into a broader issue of a zone change in the downtown. And the consequences of the zone change are not nitpicky, nickel-dime issues.
Okay.
These are big deals. This has to do with the height of buildings that could go from 30 feet to 45 feet.
Right.
It could do with parking regulations that encourage occupants of residential units to park overnight out on the streets and public parking. It could encourage developers not to provide parking for their occupants and to let them buy out payment in lieu of parking spaces. It might be very much cheaper, and I think it would be, for the developer to say, I'm not going to provide the parking on my lot, but I'll pay $2,500 for each parking space I do not have to provide. It's a one-shot deal. The town plows it, paves it, repaves it, maintains it, and I don't have to use my valuable dollars on parking. That's what's at stake. Let's get to that parking clip. It's the next to the last one, Bruce. It's the next one in sequence. Let's hit that. 3, 2, 1, go.
And then there are several provisions that allow for someone to potentially reduce or to address their parking requirement in another way. So if the parking doesn't physically fit on your lot, you have some other options, and those include there's a fees in lieu of parking provision. There's a provision for if you make some of your parking available as public parking, it counts at a greater amount. There is a shared parking provision based on the different peaks of different uses. And all of those are by special permit. So the commission does review every single one of those. If someone is not compliant with the basic reduced parking requirement, then they have the option to come in for a special permit. We're trying to create sort of cooperative parking.
And it goes on, but in the interest of time, I had to cut that clip off. The two extremes are don't have any parking regulations, and so the developers or owners of the big projects don't have to provide any parking spaces for their occupants on premises, and people that occupy the building or do business in the building, they're on their own and they'll park wherever they can. And the other extreme is require a lot of parking spaces per square foot or per dwelling unit. I want you guys to think about that, but I want to get that other clip in before we run out of time. This is a longer clip. It's about 3.5 minutes. Let's play that, and then we'll talk about both of them at the back end of it. Bruce, that last clip. 3, 2, 1, go.
And why are you going to 45 feet from what you are now? What's the point of going so high in downtown Wallingford?
Well, right now that would allow for a four-story building.
I understand that, but why? Why is the need to build it, make it more urban looking versus? Because once you start building the tall buildings, you give it more of an urban look to it. What's the point of making Wallingford downtown more urban looking?
I think part of it is to try to encourage some development. I think what we've, I guess you can perhaps build on this, Mrs. Ham, but I think what we've seen in the past, as far as with the properties right now, one of the challenges with a lot of the properties that we have are smaller parcels. I think, especially when we're looking in the incentive housing zone, there hasn't really been very much activity in that zone right now. And I suspect that's because you have smaller properties, and for a single property owner to really develop the property makes it much more difficult. Under this, I think to some degree we're envisioning, hopefully that people will, acquire 1 or 2 properties and to do some redevelopment on that.
I understand, but then build 45-foot tall buildings.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Versus 3 stories, they could still accumulate properties and build 3-story buildings versus now.
I understand. To some degree, though, it comes down to what the economics of it is also.
I understand that.
If someone, is asking, if you're looking to assemble properties and someone may be asking, I won't say an unreasonable price, but a high price for their property in order to acquire it, and then to construct something that's economically viable, a 2-story or 3-story building may not be something that's feasible.
Well, I think 45 feet is much too much.
So you have 2 properties wedged next to each other, and now you have the 45-foot tall spite building that goes in. And I don't mean by spite building in a sense, it's all hodgepodge together. Why not just scrap parking regulations, period? Let the market dictate the intensity of the use, and what uses should cohabitate with each other.
Good evening, Joe Mira from Economic Development. First of all, I'd like to commend you on taking action or trying to take action and improving our downtown area. You know, for years I've sat on panels and I've sat on boards and I've sat on committees hearing nothing but we got to do something with downtown, we have to do something with downtown. Why ain't we doing something with downtown? And the downtown needs to be improved. You gentlemen and ladies took action. I was at all your meetings. They were open to the public. The public had a right to put input as they do tonight. And I think you've come up with a real plan that addresses future growth. What most people are not taking into consideration is the way the trend of society is going. More people want to live downtown. These are smaller units, and it's going to be the town that can supply them, that can bring these people in. And the mixture of these buildings are going to give us commercial, are going to give us residential, it's going to give us a community, and Wallingford's going to have the best of both worlds.
The point of this Citizen Mike Show, this episode, is to try to point out both sides of the issue and to state that this is complicated and there's risks either way you go. And the change of zone is not a done deal. There's going to be more hearings and more debate about it. But you had Jim Seichter, Joe Mira, head of economic development, pointing out sort of one side of it, and you had a resident that was Bob Gross, and Lucille Trzynski was in there, and our own Mike Glidden, pointing out some of the other sides. So I just wanted to get that balance in, point out some of the complexities, and we don't have a crystal ball. But Mike, I want to go to you first. Your thoughts on that clip, and elaborate on your comments.
We'll start on the building height, just to give scale to people. I think that's one thing that I got a sense from, 45 feet. I think a good model or measurement that everyone can use is the Kaplan building. That's 45 feet. That's 4 stories. So saying that now you can build a 45-foot tall building throughout the downtown, or what they're rezoning, I mean, that's a substantial change. I mean, before the show, I drove down Center Street looking at the few of the buildings. There's only 6 buildings that are three-story tall existing right now. So I mean, imagine that. Now those are now 4 stories. That's really going to change the character of that downtown.
Ralph?
Well, I thought the clip did illustrate, and even our discussion is, and our disagreement, which is that, everybody can have an opinion on this, and there's not necessarily empirically a right or a wrong. I find myself not completely wanting to ignore the way buildings look or the height of them, but feel a little bit more like Mr. Jim Seichter,
chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And Mr. Mira, which is, I'd like to see some new development downtown. This isn't ideal, but I'll take it. And you and I have discussed that, and we can disagree on that you shouldn't be a we take it. But so I think it illustrates the kind of the push and pull and difficulty of downtown development.
So I'm going to weigh in now. I've sort of gone around the table. I think the fundamental flaw is in the map, because I think the Uptown is doing just fine.
Right.
And if the zone is changed to allow 4-story buildings in the Uptown, it's not beyond speculation to say 4 buildings are going to increase in height. May turn out fine.
Right.
It may turn out just absolutely wonderful, and people may, like the look of that. And that would be the building that TD Bank North is in. There was some interest in the owner of raising the height of that to the height of the Kaplan building. Across on Center Street, across from, or in the building that the Michael's Restaurant is in, the wine shop is in. That very well could go up. That section could go up to 4 stories from what it is now. The restaurant we were just talking about is not a restaurant. That commercial building that we were just talking about, the first 15 minutes, that could go up to 4, and that residential rehab that's across from Town Hall that we spent 10 minutes talking about, that could go up to 4. It's not beyond, and the owner of that kind of intimated that was going to be the plan. When the zone is changed, what we saw on the chart is going to be higher now. Fine, that may be great, that may be wonderful, but I think on the uptown, the need to do that is not as great as down by the train station, where things are underdeveloped, kind of ugly, not going anywhere, nothing has changed, it's not all that successful, and that's where more liberality and maybe, the middle of Center Street and down towards the train station, maybe that's where this map should be. I don't know, just my opinion. Everyone's entitled to an opinion, but the fact that someone's on the Planning and Zoning Commission, head of economic development in the planning office, doesn't mean their opinion is better than all the residents of the town. Mike Glidden, your comment on my comment.
No, I actually agree with you on that. I think you're right. The uptown is healthy. The only thing I was kind of questioning, so the town recently received a grant to TOD, transit-oriented development, adjacent to the train station, which part of TOD would be looking at higher densities, looking at higher buildings. I think it would be more appropriate to tie maybe that lower portion of Center Street in with the TOD and really look at a comprehensive, exactly what you're kind of saying. How can we give that shot to that area and maybe spur some reinvestment or new development?
Down there.
So I couldn't put a 4-story building on Lower Center Street? That's not, the map doesn't extend?
No, it does. The map does extend.
Okay.
But I'm saying maybe that's, I think
I agree.
Where I'm coming down, the uptown I'm not willing to take a risk on, because the uptown is already successful. I'm not willing to roll the dice. But it's not as much of a gamble down by the train stations, plural, because of the look and the underdevelopment of those properties. So I think my quarrel is with the map that they're proposing, which we described earlier in the show and we'll describe in another show, which goes all the way up Center Street. But your thoughts on that?
Well, I agree. I would have much preferred to see a development proposal if I had to pick at the corner of Center and Route 5. But that's not happening.
That's not the deal, right?
So, again, it gets to, I don't know if there's a right or a wrong, although I usually think I'm right, is some of us are willing to take what we can get downtown and be happy, and some of us are holding out for something else.
Mike, give me the options on parking, your views on parking, because that's a big risk, too.
Yeah, I take a stance of no parking regs. I like to see the market dictate the use, kind of what I said in the clip. The city of Hartford recently abolished parking regulations throughout the city. And they're the second urban city in this region. Buffalo, New York also did that. That's where I take a perspective on it in an urban setting. I feel that the parking regulations kind of pose a restriction on the intensity of development. So,
parking. This could affect everyone who goes and eats in the downtown. If they're, a no parking sort of a way of life.
Right. And I'm somewhat smirking, and I don't mean to, because it's not. It's just.
I like it when you do that.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm doing it here.
It means it's.
I do, thoughtful. And it's not. But it's just that parking is just one of those issues that. Another issue that, it just seems like the beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
So, and I don't have a definitive stance on parking in downtown. I can only say this. Anytime I've been in the uptown or downtown area, I've never really grumbled excessively about where I had to park.
Yeah. Well, the discussion, I think, of the Planning and Zoning Commission from time to time in recent history has gotten down to, should we require, this is to illustrate, it's not specific to this, but to illustrate, should we require 1 parking spot per dwelling unit, or 1.3, or 1.6, or 1.9, or 2, or two parking spaces, and the same with commercial. On a square foot basis, should we require I'm going to make this up, 100 square feet, should we require 1 parking space, none, 3, 4, 6, they're down to that nitty-gritty of a debate. I don't think they've decided it finally yet. You got the final word, and then Mike has a final word.
I'm going to pass to Mike.
Where do you want to see this go?
I personally would like to see a more comprehensive approach taken. In my comments at the meeting, I suggested looking at a form-based code, and meaning developing a master plan, coming up with a vision, and then developing regulations which complement or assist achieving that vision.
Form-based means the look of the building? Is that what that means?
It means how the buildings look, how the buildings present themselves, and how they're placed on lots. It's less emphasis is placed on the physical use of the interior spaces. So we're going to be taking this up again, because again, I think this is the biggest issue, that we've dealt with, really, because the changes could be so dramatic. The biggest issue that we've taken up in a while, and maybe we'll take up. Mike Glidden, thanks for coming on the Citizen Mike Show. Thank you for having me.
We do appreciate it, and Ralph, we will see you next week. We've got a lot of stuff to cover. We got resource officers, budgets, and student marches, and everything else. And thank you, viewer, for tuning in to the Citizen Mike Show. We're here on Wednesdays, but you should see the Citizen Mike Show Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 9 on WPAA TV. About a day or two after we produce the shows, it's up on YouTube. Go to YouTube and search the Citizen Mike Wallingford channel. Follow all the usual prompts, and you'll catch it. Or we could send you an email with a link directly to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, everybody.